Hello, welcome to Monte Carlo to Marlow.
And today I'm talking to Krista Madden. Hi, Krista. Lovely to talk to you today. And Krista, you are based in Marlow and you do lots of things with local businesses in Marlow, but you've also had quite a creative background and you haven't always lived here, have you? So
No, I'm a newbie.
you're a new bit. Well, yes and no, because you've been here a few years now.
About 3 and a bit, nearly 4 years in September.
Yeah. So you've got a really lovely background with your blogger network and
Thanks.
yeah, literally, as we're watching, you've got the Monte Carlo. So we're going to talk about all the things that you've done that has now led you to create this business in Marlow. So would you like to kind of introduce yourself and tell us kind of how it all began?
I'm one of those London people that moved out to Marlow post-COVID. I was living in central London, very bang central, like off Oxford Street in sort of Charlotte Street, which a lot of people know because it's sort of quite restauranty. It's the other side of Oxford Street from Soho. So I started my first, I won't go as far back as I could because we'll be here forever because I'm quite
Hmm.
old, but essentially I studied photography and film at college at London College of Printing. So a bit like you, I loved magazines and kind of knew that I wanted to do something in magazines. Really, when I look back, I probably should have been an art director. You know, when you think of the jobs that you kind of think that you should have been doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I studied photography. I skip along a couple of jobs, and the first business that I started was with a friend who was looking after a photographer, and was working at another hair and makeup agency, looking after hair, makeup, and stylists. So we came together and we started an agency called Time. And it's funny because Sam, who actually I'll do a podcast with at some point, she was working for a photographer and found it really hard to tell him that she was leaving. So I remember I was in our first office, which was in just off Cavendish Square. And I was ringing Sam saying, have you handed your notice in yet? Because we've started our business already and you're not here. So it took a while for Sam to join. But back then, so we represented, makeup artists, photographers, stylists and hairstylists that were working on magazines.
Yeah.
So I kind of had my fix of working with the mags. Back then, there were lots of magazines.
Mhm.
So we really were in the sort of fashion and entertainment business. A lot of people, when they think about makeup, think of prosthetics and special effects, but that was always a different kind of industry if you were in like film, television and theatre. So we had so much fun with that agency. It was a really fun time to be in the fashion industry. There
Yeah.
was, lots of money on advertising shoots and pop videos. It was a great time to be in London and it was pre-social media. So people had lots of fun and it wasn't captured anywhere on camera. It was very kind of 3 a.m. girls, if anyone remembers that. They were the showbiz stories. We worked hard because, you have to generate income for people. And we looked after a lot of people that worked on Vogue and Spice Girls. And we did Scarlett Johansson's first photo shoot, which was a black and white Time Out cover. It was, a pretty glamorous industry. And actually through that, I started a website, well, I guess it was a blog back then called Beauty and the Dirt. And it was because we were kind of behind the scenes really in the kind of work that we were doing. And I didn't want to make it, bitchy and sort of tell all and secrets. It was really about what the makeup artist was really using on a shoot and, where the stylist was getting the clothes. And because I lived in central London at that time, it was openings of, new restaurants and hotels and going to film premieres, all a bit glamorous. And I made the character of the website a little cartoon character called Mimi, kind of
Mm.
based, and she was a makeup artist. I didn't want it to be about me,
Yeah.
but kind of based it on the makeup artist that we represented. And I called her Mimi because it was all about me when they phoned in for their details and we
Oh,
gave them.
yeah.
And it's funny, I kind of like later on had said back to makeup artists, they were like, really? Would we really like that? I was like, yeah, when you're looking after people that are self-employed and they're ringing in and you're creating their diaries for them, it's like being a little PA to everybody. So I started Beauty in the Dirt like 26 years ago.
Wow. And it's still out there, isn't it?
I
Floating
still
around?
have it. I can't kill it. I can't kill it. I
No.
don't update it as often as I should. It feels like maybe it'll see me out. Maybe it will still be there when I'm gone. It was really, yeah, it was really popular that time because it was, and I don't know, quite a lot younger than me, but back then, magazines didn't have their own websites. The newspapers did. They were like paywalled. And so I was a bit of a novelty act, really. There was Urban Junkies, Pop Bitch, Chili Candy, Beauty in the Dirt. We were the only four sort of independent websites really that were kind of updating regularly and had, good content.
You had that space then, didn't you, really? And
Yeah,
in this day and age, it's
absolutely.
exciting. So to have that space is amazing.
Well, there were times when it was thousands and thousands of views of pages, which you would like die for now to get the kind of unique visitors and impressions. But as you say, it's because there wasn't much out there. There were few American beauty blogs, but there weren't really many people doing what I was doing, especially from the position that I was in, because it was real content. And, I could speak to the beauty editor at Tatler or Vogue and say, "What's in your makeup bag?" Because
Yeah.
they weren't doing that themselves on social media. And they were happy to say, because people like talking about themselves. It's
Mm.
kind of fun. It's all tongue in cheek. It wasn't bitchy. Sometimes it was a bit bitchy, but it was always positive, and just had like a fun glam kind of side to it. So from having Beauty in the Dirt, I then became press, and
Mm.
I was invited to go on, oh God, the amount of amazing press trips and film premieres and trips to the Maldives, and, you name it. And I was there with beauty editors from Cosmo, Daily Mail, or so I got to then know that sort of crowd of people who were then also happy for me to speak to them. So they almost, like, some of them became contributors and things. So it was a brilliant time. I wasn't looking to monetize it. I was just looking for a bit of a hobby, I guess. And the benefits were so amazing that I didn't care about getting any money, because I was getting free mascaras and free trips and free dinners, and I'm really grateful. So it was it was a fun time to have a website, really. But like
Yeah.
you had to be a bit techie back then and had to learn how to write in HTML and code. There were no photos on the website because it was really hard to load. It was pre-Blogger,
Yeah.
pre-WordPress.
Yeah.
So yeah, back in the day, dinosaur
No.
digitals.
Yeah, but you learn it all and you were there and you were one of the beginning, at the beginning, one of the first, which is a really good
I hate
space
to
to be
say
in.
it, but yeah, a bit kind of like one of the first influencers, which I would never like to call myself, but I was at that time, and the brands knew it, and the press were happy to write about Beauty in the Dirt, because back then they didn't have their own websites.
Yeah.
So I remember the beauty editor at one time saying, "Oh, it's more addictive than Facebook," and Sunday Times called it the compendium of London cool, because it was
Wow.
cool back then, back in the day.
Wow. Amazing.
So yeah, it was super fun. And through having Beat in the Dirt, I then would just sort of learn on the job about being digital and social media. As we were saying when I was talking to you, Twitter was really fun then as well. And Instagram sort of came along. So we were saying that Twitter was like 2006, and then Instagram's like 2010. So things started to get a bit more visual when Instagram came along. But because I'd started something that brands were quite eager to suddenly get involved in, because they knew that newspapers and magazines sadly were folding. So
Yeah.
the digital landscape of publishing was really emerging as like the place that if you had some money, that's where you should be. It was about learning on the job about how to do advertorials online. The brands wanted to work with websites, but they kind of didn't quite know who to work with because there wasn't Instagram. They didn't know who was popular. I had everybody coming to me asking me how I could monetize, how to build a blog. So it got to the point where I thought, okay, I'm going to start an agency with
Mm.
everybody under one roof. There were mummy bloggers, film bloggers, food bloggers, and I called it Handpicked Media, because I found myself calling people and saying, I'm handpicking sites that I think go really well together. I got an ops manager and a friend who was working as fashion editor at Wedding and Home. A little gang of us started, and Handpicked Media became first place that you could go and advertise with kind of reputable blogs. And it was blogs then, it wasn't, you weren't an influencer on Instagram then, you were a blogger.
Blogs have changed. The term blog has changed an awful lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always hated the word blogger and blog, but kind of is what it is. People don't realize it means web log. That's the shortened
Right.
version of what it is. It was an unavoidable word. But yeah, so Handpicked Media then became the place that if you were a brand and you wanted to try and work with people that had an independent voice, you could come to Handpicked Media because it was a trusted resource in a way that if you wanted to spend money and do a campaign, we would then approach blogs and say, there's this brand, or it's Sainsbury's, and they want to talk about the new Jamie Oliver knife series or kitchen series. And if you don't like it and you think you'll say something bad about it, don't join this campaign. So we then recruited people that said, yeah, I'd like to work on that. So the brands couldn't control what was being said. It took a bit of time to convince the brands that actually that was just far more valuable for someone to be allowed to say that they liked your product.
Yeah.
And then, eventually brands did cotton on to the fact that if you just step back a little bit and let people say what they like, it's actually more valuable to you than putting a billboard up, because this is real people telling you they love your product.
Authentic. Yeah, absolutely. Which in this day and age, it's all sort of reviews on Reels and Instagram. And even on blogs as well, like writing reviews, gifted for reviews. That's what they all want, because they want that user generated content. It's all comes from that authentic person.
Yeah, the authentic voice. And originally people were writing about things they loved without being giving freebies. So again, that's where when I started Beauty in the Dirt, I wasn't getting free things. I was writing about Beauty in the Dirt because I was having fun experiences and I was working with makeup artists who were on shoots with Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford. Not everything had to be about getting a gift. And I think that's the difference now, is that people do switch off. They might follow someone that they love on Instagram, but as soon as they see the paid for PR gifted content, the engagement's not there. And they kind of know that a lot of people have sold out now for
Yeah,
cash.
it's a thing. But I think that you mentioned influencer. I think that is a term that people kind of are put off by, because as you say, the kind of, it's ads, it's paid collaborations, it's paid sponsored, been paid to say this stuff, where the sort of the user generated stuff where it's like, you just go off and do it. Some of it is gifted, but I've noticed that there are also people kind of just showcasing something, a place that they've been, just because they want to. And again, it's authentic, and I'll do it, want something from it, but I just think it's valuable
Well,
for.
I genuinely, there's something I love. I mean, back in the day, I probably was an influencer. I do definitely know that I sold things. I definitely know that
Yeah.
it went from almost being, I knew when I started Beauty in the Dirt that because I worked in the beauty industry and obviously I was working with people who were professional makeup artists, people would say to me, what eye cream should I get? And what's that? And I used to sort of tell my friends. And I always knew that kind of I had so many people that wanted that information from me. That's where I kind of thought, okay, well, I'm going to start Beauty in the Dirt and my friends want to know. So maybe other people will. But I still find, to this day, I never worked on my Instagram to become an influencer. I was too busy working on the 500 blogs that we looked after at that time. I still find now if I say, I really like this, or like, I get loads of DMs from mostly friends, but even people that don't know me but have followed me for years go, I'm going to go and get that. That looks brilliant. Thanks for that. And I still know now I'm still selling things on
Yeah.
Instagram, even though I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers.
You don't
Um,
need hundreds of thousands followers, because you could have hundreds and thousands of followers, but they're not all seeing your content anyway, because it's just not possible. The algorithm's not going to, you're not going to be shown to all those people. It's just not possible. So you need to be.
No, and that's where it moved to really, is that originally when people wanted to work with blogs, you had your Google Analytics and people could see, how many follower page impressions. But I think with Instagram, there was that kind of time when the switch went from blogs to Instagram, and then suddenly people were buying their followers and there wasn't a genuine amount of followers on there, and you could see it. It was so obvious. And that's when I kind of started to sort of be a bit more disillusioned with the whole business, because at the beginning we called it like the Wild West of publishing, almost, in a way, because no one really knew where it was going. I remember I used to go into brands. I remember being in L'Oreal's office and setting up Yves Saint Laurent and Lancome on Twitter in the boardroom. But the PR team were like, what do we say? I was like, just say hi, we're on Twitter. So if you went back to that Yves Saint Laurent and Lancome tweet, that would be the first one that we did in Hammersmith. But people didn't understand how to kind of talk online. They were scared about working with people that might say bad things, like I said, but then eventually the brand started to become the story rather than the influence because they could control their own narrative, really. It's taken quite a long time, really. Influencers are now. Everyone talks about micro influencers. You are just, if not more,
People.
influential if you're smaller than the larger ones because, okay, you might have a smaller audience, but the conversion rate is better because people believe you.
And also, you look at the big, big influencers, you know that they're getting paid a lot of money to talk about this brand. And it does work. Yes, it does work. I mean, I'm wearing my Vivo barefoots because Joe Wicks wears them. I will have my Lululemon. It kind of does work.
Careful with your Lululemon, controversial.
Love it. I do love it. But, at the same time, yeah, it's the smaller ones. It's smaller person that you kind of really trust that they're kind of going, actually, yeah, I like that. And even like the ones that say, no, don't go to that place. It was crap. There are people out there
People
that
love reviews, don't they? Do you ever buy
honestly,
anything without looking at Amazon reviews? I don't. Trustpilot reviews, that's what you essentially are, aren't you? You're like a
yeah,
online review.
different way of doing it. Yeah. And showcasing it. I think that's the one thing that you mentioned, that there wasn't any social media, but now it's all very visual. So you can kind of see for yourself whether, yes, okay, we can make the shots look a bit more flattering and a bit better, but you can see actually that looks like a really good vibe. That restaurant looks amazing. That food looks good. You can't hide from that.
I think you've got to also, if you are endorsing something paid or otherwise, you should consider what your reputation is. If you're being paid a lot of money to say something is great and it's not, and your audience is going to go there and go,
And a
actually,
point at
this is
you.
crap, then are they going to carry on following you? And are they
Yeah,
going to believe a word you say next time? So you've got to be really careful about your brand, really.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you kind of gone from London. You kind of lived in Monte Carlo as well.
No, I didn't ever live in Monte Carlo. I had Handpicked Media,
Yeah.
which I have for about 10 years. And then eventually I just got really influencers, I'll say it, did my head in. So I couldn't carry on working in that industry. It kind of had just changed so much. I'd had a brilliant time, met so many brilliant people, and was really fortunate to be at the forefront of that whole kind of sweep over to digital. I used to speak at a lot of conferences, Guardian, I was on Sky News a lot, and got so much out of it and learned so much. But there came a time when, my head was always one foot in the brand side, one foot into the person I was representing. And I could never lie either side. And I
Mm,
found myself sort of influencers were just asking for too much money. And I thought, I can't ask the brand for that. It's not right. So
yeah.
I closed Handpicked after it being bought by Future Digital. That's for another day. That's for some advice on if you're selling your company, what not to do. But yeah, so I closed Handpicked Media and I thought, okay, if I'm going to start a new company, then it needs to be in something that I'm really interested in. I've always been in the beauty industry, but for me, it was always sort of health and wellness side of beauty. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do something. That time there were a lot of festivals in London, Sweaty Betty Live, Lululemon, and fitness shows, and I thought, well, I'll do an event about health and wellness because through a lot of the press events and a lot of the things that I'd been to, I knew Jasmine Hensley, who had been talking about Ayurveda. I knew a lot of people that I was really lucky to go to lots of press events and things and meet people that were kind of at the forefront of the wellness industry. Pre-COVID, I thought it would be a good idea to do something in Monte Carlo because I have a place in the south of France. It's a bus journey to Monte Carlo.
Right. Okay. That's where I kind of wasn't quite sure. Right. So you didn't
No, if
live.
I was living in Monte Carlo, I wouldn't be sat in my kitchen here now
Yeah.
in
Mind
Marlow. But
you, you've got a place in the south of France and
yeah, no, I have got a place
you're
in
still
South
here.
France. And so I thought if I launched a festival in Monte Carlo, they've not had anything like that before. And if you launch it in Monte Carlo, it could be somewhere as like a shishi kind of the inaugural one was here and it could, go around the world really. So I called it In Your Element. And so there was fire, earth, air and water. These were the different elements that were part of the festival. So fire was all the energy and the sort of physical cardio side, earth was the nutrition, being by the sea and health and sort of being outdoors. And so I launched In Your Element. It was 2019 in Monte Carlo.
Okay.
when I look back now, I think, how the hell did I do that? Because
Oh,
it's quite hard doing something in another country. It's
yeah.
very hard doing something in Monte Carlo unless you've got thousands and thousands of money in
Yeah.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
But I did know that I would have really good people come along and I knew I could put on a really good event. So I had friends that were in England that I brought over, but I also wanted to make sure there were people that were local. So it was a real combination. So yeah, I put on In Your Element in 2019 in July and it was a whole weekend. Yeah, it was amazing. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
As you are. We did Monte Carlo's first ever silent disco and it was, yeah, it was really fun. We had the TV, Monte Carlo TV come down and the radio and it was everywhere because I did it in lots of different places around Monte Carlo. So it's not there anymore, but it was at Stars and Bars where we were on the port doing a silent disco by all the super yachts. We had world class gym where we had a lot of classes, the Columbus Hotel where we had our talks. So we kind of took over Monte Carlo for the weekend. And yeah, it was brilliant. And by the sort of the Sunday evening with the last classes, people were like hugging each other and crying. So they'd had this like
Oh,
amazing weekend. Because Monte Carlo is sort of maybe more known for Lamborghinis and sequins and cocktails, that
mm,
coming along and doing something different. And so, yeah, it was super fun to have done it. But a bit like you with your 2019 story, I had a second one organized in April 2020. And then the Duchess of Rutland, who has Belvoir Castle, her PA approached me very out the blue and said, "Oh, we'd love you to do the event in the castle."
oh,
And so I had organized that because, as we didn't know about March 2020 yet. So I then spent sort of like the last part of 2019 and Belvoir Castle is absolutely stunning. I'd go up on the train and work out where we were doing yoga and
oh,
places within the castle to do sound baths. I had Penhaligons and Bentleys and, people that were sponsoring it. It was all arranged for July 2020. And then, yeah, so I flew out to France a month before my second event in Your Element. And I got to France the day before it went into lockdown. And it was at that time when everybody was like, this is going to last a couple of weeks.
yeah. I remember that. I remember just thinking, even like just sort of before lockdown, people were like, "Oh, it's not going to happen. They're not going to lock us down." And like, even like I was sort of planning parties and events, and people were like, "Oh, still go ahead." And then there are other people going, "No, hang on a minute. This is going to
I
happen."
remember going to a press event the night before I was flying to France for my event, and people were talking about it. And I remember it was all very sort of like moi, moi. And if you went to a London
Mm.
event, and I remember going in and going, "I'm not kissing anyone. I'm not shaking hands." And they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Krista, get over yourself." I was like, "Nope, I'm flying to France tomorrow, and I am not getting on a plane and having a germ." And yeah, so I went to France and yeah, it went into lockdown March 16th. I remember it. So obviously then everything cancelled.
Every
And I sat in my apartment in the south of France till December.
Oh, I mean, not a bad place to be throughout lockdown.
Everyone says that. And yes, I'm not complaining. I could see the sea. But
Yeah.
we had really strict lockdown rules in France.
So then lockdown lifted. So when did you come to Marlow? When did that happen? So that
So
happened
I
before. You're still in London in 2019.
moved in 2022. So yeah, I couldn't move because obviously then the property market was dead because you couldn't have anyone coming to look at your place. I got back to London and 2021. Then we had another kind of lockdown in London where there was nobody in town, which actually I quite liked. I know that's selfish, but
No,
it was
no.
really nice having
Right.
London quiet.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Marlow September, the day after the Queen died, actually, September
Right.
9th.
So
2022, because
yeah.
I remember I used to live in view of the BT Tower that used to
Mm,
have messages
mm,
around it if it was Remembrance Day or there was something. I remember the Queen died on the 8th and I was packing my last things in my flat and my Wi-Fi was cut off. Like when you move, everything. I just remember, how we obsessively listen to news when something really, huge happens. I
yeah.
remember just having my phone on and listening to the radio because I couldn't watch anything. And in the morning when I left, there was a big sign on the BT Tower that just said, "Goodbye, Mom." And I
Oh,
was like, "Oh, me and the Queen." It's like, "Goodbye, Mom." I'd
yeah,
lived there for 30 years. We
yeah,
both left at the same time. So I'll always remember it. September the 9th, 2022 is
yeah.
when I moved to Marlow.
Gosh. And is this no, but that's no, that's really that's quite emotional. But is it a was it a move that you've never looked back? Although, I mean, you've had a really amazing life, the career. Do you feel like this was I mean, you're still here, so
I'm
it's
still alive, just about, yeah.
yeah, it's still alive. So it wasn't something you regretted, I hope.
No, no, I didn't know where to go to. A lot of my friends are all over the world, so there wasn't any one place that I felt like I was going to move to. I kind of felt like I wanted to be somewhere that had a little bit of something going on. I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting to live off Oxford Street anymore. I was like very over that. But I needed somewhere that had a bit of a buzz and something that, I could walk to a high street and not have to get in a car and have to go somewhere. So that
Mm,
ruled out obviously quite a lot of like beautiful countryside places that maybe I would love to be in, but I wanted to be somewhere that I could walk still.
mm.
People still say to me, how do you survive without a car?"
You can
And
do
I'm
it.
like, "I've
Can
got
do it.
legs." Yeah.
Got legs, transport.
Um,
Yeah.
so I can walk to stations and get taxis and walk. So yeah, so Marlow was somewhere that I came to. I didn't know anyone here. Well, I knew a couple of people, but not really friends. And I just sort of walked up and down the high street, and I remember having a cake outside Strawberry Grove, and I looked up and down. I came with a friend who was driving me to all these places. And we both sat there and I said, "I think I'm going to live here." But
I
that was
love
some
how
cake, obviously, in Strawberry Grove. But
well, thanks Strawberry Grove for your move. So I love the fact that you've had no ties, and that's one thing that is kind of helped you to kind of go right. I can going back to the hand picked. You can hand pick where you're going to live, and I love that.
yeah, I probably would have liked to have moved a bit earlier, but
Yeah,
it's because I didn't know where I wanted to go.
yeah. It obviously wasn't the right time then. You had to make that
And
decision.
no, you're right. It's the timing of life, isn't it? It's not always what you think it's going to be. And I think because I've got my place in France, which is in a sort of small village,
Yeah,
I knew that as much as I had this very exciting, lovely, buzzy London life, I knew that actually I really enjoyed the quieter village life. I mean, I know Marlow isn't quite south of France, but it's a very beautiful town.
mm,
And, it's great being by the river. I wish we could swim in it. I wish it wasn't so disgusting.
yeah.
But, there's beautiful countryside, great high street, really lovely community, and only like an hour into London as well.
Exactly. We're so close to everything around here. We've got so many towns around London. It is a good place to live.
Yeah, so I'm really happy here. I definitely feel like I'm in the right place, I think.
Yeah, you feel at home.
Yeah, I mean, I still go into London, and I still consider myself a Londoner very much. And I go into London, and I come out the escalators at Tottenham Court Road, and I think still
Um,
feel like I'm home. Yeah, it's funny, but it's a long time. I spent a long time there.
yeah,
Yeah, and I feel really grateful that I lived in sort of central London for such a long time because it was such a brilliant experience.
yeah, and that's allowed you then, as time's gone on, to kind of have a lovely home in Marlow, which is a very affluent area. It's nice. As you say, you've got the town, everything's all there, and you've got the river. It's amazing. It's a lovely place. It really is.
Yeah, it is a beautiful place, Marlow. It's very special, I
Mm.
think, and
It
quite unique. Yeah,
I think it's unique. I do, absolutely. So then
I'm very lucky.
you're very lucky. And I think it's all about gratitude. And we handpicked Maidenhead, and I hadn't even lived here. I didn't even come and check it all out. I just
You didn't
decided
even have a cake in a shop like I did.
to do the cake thing. No, my husband was working here. We were living in West London, and we were renting at the time, and we needed to buy. He was working in Maidenhead. He'd lived previously in Maidenhead. He didn't particularly really want to come back to Maidenhead, but I said, "No, we're gonna buy a house, and we're gonna live in Maidenhead." And the rest is history. So, similar to you, but I didn't have the
Emma,
cash.
we're both Capricorns. We know what we want.
We know what we want. Absolutely. So and then we kind of go back to the business, we both set businesses up in our town. So you brought in your elements to Maidenhead, sorry, to
So yeah, I
Marlow.
had to start from scratch really. I did a London event just before well, actually I had moved. It was October 2022. I did the first one after Monte Carlo and I did it in Eccleston Yards, and I did a Women's Health Day. And I had an amazing lineup of like Katie Brindle, Kate Rohan, Victoria Adams, And it was a fantastic day. And it
So
kind of,
Victoria Adams
it
before she was
was not Posh Spice, but I
oh,
know
okay.
it's funny. No, I didn't have the Spice Girls get back together for that women's
Although
health.
they used talking of Spice Girls, they used where I live, where I'm pointing, they used to live in a house around the corner on my next road.
All of the Spice
All of
Girls.
the Spice Girls when they were kind of because they were a manufactured band. It was pre when I lived here, but they lived in a house literally on the
Well, I
next.
remember when I had my hair and makeup agency that obviously we used to do them for shoots and things. And then one of my makeup artists got the gig of doing the Spice Girls, the movie.
So yes, you did your women's
So I
health
did a
and you,
Women's Health Day, and that kind of gave me my mojo back a bit to think, okay, I do really enjoy putting events together. I must be mad because it is stressful, but I really enjoy kind of curating a day with like brilliant people and thinking people are going to enjoy this. They're going to get a lot out of it. So when I came to Marlow, I thought, okay, I'm going to do an In Your Element. It feels like the right kind of place that people would enjoy it. It's the right kind of age group there. So I didn't know anyone here. So I ended up going up and down the high street because I wasn't sure if I was going to do a women's health day or just a wellness event like I'd done previously. And because obviously most of the people in the high street that have shops are women. So I just went in and said, oh, I've just moved here. I'm thinking of doing an event. What do you think? And it was like, yeah, do it. And don't, some people are like, yeah, do women's health. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to open it to everybody. And because I got to know people in the shops, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to include you as well because the feedback was that there's a lot of things that go on in Marlow that are in the park. And it means that people come to Marlow, just go to the park and then don't visit the high street and then really missing out because it's an amazing high street. And so I had Reiki in Jigsaw and Louise at 23 Living did sort of aromatherapy workshops. In Arlo and Jacob, you could have a head to toe meditation. So I included the shops so that rather than just having all your classes in one place, you could also then discover things in different places in the high street, which everyone loved. It also meant that the shops were happy to promote my event because they were also part of it. I had bright blue In Your Element bags within Your Element in gold with their goodie bags up and down
no.
the high street. So that was all good marketing. It was a really good day, but it's a lot of work.
Mm.
And I think that people aren't that prepared to pay ticket prices because it's not like having something in pub in the park where, you have thousands and thousands. Your capacity's limited
Mm.
to your venue. And I just thought I put so much into that. The goodie bags were amazing. They were like worth about 160 quid and they had like a Vader and Walida.
Wow.
Tickets were I think about 60 quid. And some people were like complaining about the price of the tickets. And I was like, really?
All of
Got
this.
Davina McCall's trainer here doing a class for you. I've got Mariella Frustrop's partner that she wrote Menopause book with Alice doing a talk and then book signing in the bookshop. I used a lot of local people, but also brought some like very brilliant, like Alice Hart Davis, who's Daily Mail, You magazine beauty editor. There's some brilliant people that came to be part of it because a lot of them had been part of Monte Carlo
Yeah.
and the London one and just wanted to stay in the gang, really.
Yeah. That's
So,
amazing.
so yeah, it was good, but I thought I'm not going to earn a living doing this.
So, but you are still doing some,
So
you know,
I ended up doing more kind of lifestyle events
yeah,
rather than just sort of health and wellness
yeah.
because the shops were really up for it. They got a lot back from it, even when it came to pounds and pence, people would say, we earned an extra £2,500 when we did that, and so I knew I was getting really good feedback from the shops.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing sort of like late night shopping events, advent with the shops and with the late night shopping. Anything I did, I kind of tried to stick someone in a shop. So you could get a tarot reading at Nook or, there was always that
I love
element of trying to give like a makeup artist in Jigsaw. I always tried to make it rather than just like the shops are staying open late is to try and make it so that there's sort of things
the
going on to
reason
try and
to go.
attract people to
Go.
come
And that's
out.
good because Marlow is it's just all in one place. I love how it is, it's so easy to go around all the shops and just go in and do all of that.
Yeah. And I think people from Marlow really like doing things in Marlow.
Yeah. Tell me what you're doing now. So you're doing something called Love Marlow.
So I've launched a new website and monthly newsletter. And again, I'm really conscious of thinking what you'd said in when we were chatting about, you don't want to step on toes, and you want to try and do something that's different and that is of use, that is valuable for people locally. So I I've always been about, I think because from when I was an agent, my hair and makeup agency, and then being a blogger agent, I always feel like I've kind of got that agent kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And I felt that in all the time I've been here, people have always been sort of coming to me for a bit of advice and how do I do this and where do I go for that? And so with lovemarlowlife.com, it's a kind of it's very community driven. So I approached a lot of people like Vicky Clark, who's an ADHD coach. I approached a lot of people that as individuals and said, do you want to do a column? Do you want to be part of this Love Marlow Life? And people were really up for it. So yes, of course, you've got High Street. So I've got Louise at 23 Living, writing style tips. And so I really wanted to have something that everybody felt that they were part of. So it wasn't just me saying, this is going on. There's a Santa fun run, there's a pub in the park. So it's making it quite different and it's supporting and showcasing businesses like you're doing in Maidenhead. I think, we often talk about sort of similar issues or sort of challenges that we have with people.
Yeah.
So Love Marlow Life, it's new. It launched on May 1st, and the monthly newsletter will be themed. So the first one, because it was May 1st when The Devil Wears Prada came out, I made it fashion themed. And the Everyman Cinema in Marlow are giving away 5 pairs of tickets to me every month for the newsletter.
Oh, lovely.
And Gales are giving away a sourdough weekly. At the moment, Fizzy Fest are giving 6 tickets. So as a subscriber, you're always going to be entered into a draw to win a prize,
I love
which
it.
is sort of cool. And it's free to sign up. So,
Yeah. I've
it's a
signed up.
no-brainer, folks.
I
Sign up.
So Love
And
Marlow Life then. Yeah.
lovemarlowlife.com. And yeah, it's free, obviously, to sign up. It's early days, but it's been really well received. People have really enjoyed being part of it. There's a Made in Marlow section for businesses that are made in Marlow. And so that's again supporting. So I think a bit like you, if you want to see what's happening, I haven't got a directory. I haven't got a calendar of events. That very much is something that other people are doing. But equally, if you thought, well, I want a solicitor, Blazer Mills are doing a legal column, Amber River are doing a financial column. It's about trying to support your local friends
Fine.
and neighbours.
Still find those businesses. They don't have to be as a directory listing. They can just, be talking about themselves.
So if you've got a column,
Mm.
it's a bit like you with your Q&As. You get to know the business a little bit before,
Their
you know,
authority. They're talking about what the subject they name that they know.
yeah.
So
So it's a bit of a try before you buy kind of thing.
yeah.
And so it's early days, but I feel like I've gone back to my beauty in the dirt days, really, where it's very editorial. So it's about trying to sort of bring lots of smaller businesses together under one roof. So you can discover more about what's going on in Marlow beyond the kind of the very obvious things that are like yearly things that are brilliant. But there's also lots of other people doing new things that maybe miss out a little bit
Yeah.
because they're small or they don't quite know where they can, go for an extra shout out. So on social media, there's Love Marlow Life, and I've even got a Love Marlow Life news. So I've got two pages that are kind of, I've turned In Your Element into Love Marlow Life because I found that I was doing more and more things locally. So I may as well have them both pointing to the same place.
And it's good not to kind of spread yourself too thinly and just home it in and just focus. I love it. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thanks for having me.